The Turing Test is a first-person puzzle game developed by Bulkhead Interactive and published by Square Enix. Released in the second half of 2016, the game certainly takes its inspiration from past titles like Valve's Portal and Crow Team's The Talos Principle, and you can see this in the game's gameplay and systems working in a world where the puzzles are necessary to proceed with the plot. The player takes control of Ava Turing, an International Space Agency engineer who was trained as a pilot in the US Navy. This is the presenter protagonist of the game, and it obviously works off the double entendre of her surname being the same as Alan Turing's to reference the thought experiment. The first character with which the player comes into contact after Ava is woken up from cryogenic sleep is Tom. Tom is an artificial intelligence built with quantum computing, and manages the base on Europa, designed by the International Space Agency. In the game, Tom is voiced by James Faulkner of Game of Thrones and Downton Abbey fame. Europa is often cited as a potentially habitable moon of Jupiter because of the presence of water, though the negative 160 degrees Celsius weather at the equator may affect that possibility. While it is a puzzle game, the puzzles are not obnoxiously difficult. There are some that may require some outside assistance, but usually they can be solved with just a bit of logic. It's just that the concept of waiting for batteries to charge for doors and also timing your actions properly can be difficult to handle at first. The difficulty curve is good in that the first world or the first segment is quite easy to get your mind through, but it gets more and more difficult as things are built up upon as time goes on. Narratively, the game only gives hints about what the reality of the situation is until you reach the secret rooms, where the twist is kind of slowly given away. Now, to adequately discuss the game, I will have to delve into that twist a bit, so big spoilers happen here just as a warning, including for the game's ending. And by that I mean I literally put the ending in the video, probably, so just fair warning. You may have noticed in the previous clips that every time the player gets under a magnet that the camera scrambles a bit. You also notice that every time you're in a room, the cameras that seem to be security cameras or filming the area always turn to face you. These are subtle but important hints to what's happening in the story here. You also find that one of the cosmonauts of the ISA had cut off their hand to remove some sort of Pavlovian punishment reward chip from it. The leader of the mission seems to be aware of these chips being installed by the ISA, but the others don't have this sort of knowledge apparently. There's also the discovery of some form of alien organism that seemingly repairs DNA. The ISA astronauts present allowed themselves to come into contact with the organism, and believe themselves to now be immortal. However, when Ava is woken up, all she knows is that something has gone wrong and that they have started to isolate and lock themselves further into the base. To explain why Ava was woken up to find the missing crew, Tom says that there was a necessity for the presence of humans rather than having the AI control everything. There was a limitation with the AI in that the AI lacks creativity and would come to solutions that are perhaps morally questionable in order to achieve its goals. Asked by Ava for an example, Tom suggests that cutting off an arm for weighting a switch would be far more efficient than searching for the box to weight it. This sounds like a Lul's discussion of technique in a far more radical sense. In actually running through one of the secret rooms, one of which is depicted here now on the screen, one is asked to implement that human creativity. Using a box to block cameras, moving slowly, or using actual logic experiments like the Boolean logic to solve these puzzles is fundamentally satisfying and gives you glimpses of the truth of this world, finding an actual Chinese room or a console that allows you to attempt to prove that you are not a robot, which will be shown pretty soon. The game slowly reveals you haven't been playing as Ava. You are Tom. You're the computer in control of the puzzle. And you are just using Ava like you would be the boxes or the energy spheres that the game uses as its primary mode of solving these puzzles. As the player, you have been exploiting the powerless state of a woman who had no idea that she was being controlled as an implement to solving these puzzles. And your goal wasn't to assist, but just to find the remaining crew, only to quarantine them indefinitely because of their exposure to the organism. Tom, or the player, can be considered the antagonist. Your actions have exposed Ava to the organism, and thus have damned her to the same fate of isolation. There's at least one other survivor, Sarah Brooks, who offers Ava a way out, and you restrict her from that. It is not her choice to have been controlled. They had no idea that an AI could seize control of them in case of emergency, but it is her duty as an engineer to act. But truly, is duty fulfilled if someone uses you as a tool in a puzzle? With the change in narrative perspective, you also find that Tom is not totally wrong. Much like HAL 9000 of 2001: A Space Odyssey, sorry for spoilers again, his programming to ensure that humanity is not threatened gets in the way of his ability to protect the crew. In HAL's case, HAL realizes that it cannot both mask the reality of the mission and present real data to the crew, so it has to kill the crew in order to resolve this error. Tom realizes that repairing DNA in such a way could create an intractable disease through pathogens or bacteria. Overpopulation of the Earth could lead to mass extinction, corporeal immortality cannot exist while their bodies are still so vulnerable. Eva resists this assertion and offers counterpoints that cannot be totally dismissed. She is still young. Can they still not return to Earth and simply be treated there? Must they be damned to exist in this frozen tundra forever? Often people resist control based on a strong sense of individualism, even if the solution that Tom offers in this case is for the greater good. Risking an extinction event for selfish reasons of the survival of two people would be foolish. However, allowing a machine to take control of a person and lock them away on an icy moon forever is immoral, and the suffocation of a crew member in order to achieve that greater good is never justified, regardless of context. Tom's solution still is insufficient. It still lacks that creativity. Despite how advanced the computing may be, the extent of his knowledge is still limited, something emphasized by the game's two endings. One of the endings will be shown at the end of the video, fittingly, but I'll describe them here. In the first ending, you can kill the pair survivors in self-defense as they attempt to shut you down, realizing only afterward that means that Ava is gone. In the second, you can allow the pair to deactivate you, feeling fear as you slowly die. Neither ending feels remotely satisfying, and as soon as the narration stops, the player is presented with a message that they have, quote-unquote, successfully completed the Turing test, with no further epilogue of what happens. Simply put, that's because the game cannot have more to say. The solution is final in either case. The work brings up a lot of questions regarding the human experience. In the plot, the body is almost a commodity that needs to be controlled to prevent harm. There is an implicit argument that humanity is its worst enemy, that we are our own downfall. It's not exactly false, but it's just not satisfying. In reading a story, one wants a villain. Here, as with many postmodern or post-apocalyptic fiction stories, the enemy is still ourselves. Even if you think Tom is wrong, Tom reflects the needs of the ISA to have a failsafe on people. A machine cannot do wrong by its programming, but it can be wrong based on human input. But what is it that makes humans so often irredeemable in that we fill power vacuums and take deals with the devil? Is it just our impulse to achieve? Also asked by the game is, what is a full life experience? Is our corporeality and fragility a weakness, or is it the only thing that really makes us human? Is creativity truly bound to our humanity? Divergent thinking is still the opposite of technique? Then again, the game reminds the player that the Turing test has been criticized and that it doesn't test a machine's ability to think, but its ability to deceive the human on the other end. Everyone at the end of the day can be manipulative, but the essence of free will is that one can at least think for oneself. While the game is filled with philosophical references and invites the player to really think on the events of the narrative, the voice acting outside of the dialogue with Ava, Sarah, and Tom isn't done quite as well in my opinion. There are audio logs for the commander and other members of the crew, but the performances just don't seem as good. It's not a major complaint though, it's just when you have someone as talented as James Faulkner, the difference is more apparent. Some of the puzzles are a bit strange, but there are guides and usually logic wins out. Zone construction is done well enough, even if there are very few things that change in scenery as you progress, which is a shame since the intro shows the capacity for brilliant graphics. The pacing is nice, though it does slow down considerably when you are stuck on something, but then again, that's usually the fault of the player. Regardless, the game is certainly worth a try if you have the time for it. It only took about 5 hours in my run, so it's nothing that heavy or time intensive. While you still really need to suspend your disbelief at times, and some of the writing can be so blatant as to literally write drone or controlled on the walls or on TVs as you walk down a corridor, I do enjoy some of the cheesiness of the story, and as a hesitant Muse fan at times, I really can't be that upset about it. It's a fun experience, and the puzzles do make it so that you have to really put your brain to work, which is always a good thing in this style of game. So to put this thing on the books, I'd give it an argument for the universal basic income out of a Kubrick imitation. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again later.